The lights in the meeting room were dim, just how the Vorthak liked them. Commander Day-Ho sat across from the large reptilian alien, watching as Kethavar's clawed fingers moved over the trade documents. The space station hummed quietly around them, thousands of different aliens going about their business in the massive structure that floated between star systems. "The mining rights on Kepler 442b are very valuable," Kethavar said, his voice making a low hissing sound. "My people want fair compensation." Day-Ho nodded. He had been negotiating with aliens for 10 years now, and he knew how to stay calm and patient. "The humans understand this. We are willing to share 30% of all profits with the Vorthak Consortium." The reptilian alien's eyes narrowed. 40%. 35, and we provide all the mining equipment, Day-Ho replied smoothly. Kethavar was about to respond when the station's alarms began blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the meeting room. Both beings looked up as an announcement echoed through the station's speakers. Security alert. All vessels departing Bay 94 are to be stopped and searched immediately. This is not a drill. Day-Ho stood up, his hand moving to the communication device on his belt. "Excuse me," he said to Kethavar, then spoke into the device. "Commander Kim, to Security Chief Park, what's the situation?" Hyojin's voice crackled through the speaker, tense and urgent. "Sir, we have a problem. A Nexari transport just left the station without clearance. Our sensors picked up human biosignatures on board." "Human biosignatures?" Day-Ho repeated, his voice suddenly sharp. "Explain." 12 signatures, sir, all showing as children between ages 6 and 14. The meeting room went completely silent. Kethavar watched as something changed in the human's face. The calm, diplomatic expression was gone, replaced by something cold and dangerous. "Are you certain?" Day-Ho asked, his voice now completely different from the polite tone he had been using moments before. "Yes, sir. We checked 3 times. The Nexari ship also accessed Bay 12 earlier today, where the civilian transport from New Sol was refueling. That transport was carrying families relocating to the outer colonies." Day-Ho's hands clenched into fists. "How long ago did the Nexari ship leave?" 18 minutes, sir. They're heading toward the Kresh system. Lock down the station, no one leaves. Get me Captain Jun-Ho on the Defiant Storm immediately." Day-Ho turned to look at Kethavar, who had been listening to the conversation. The reptilian alien had seen many species angry before, but there was something in the human's eyes that made his scales prickle with unease. "Commander," Kethavar said carefully, "perhaps this is a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Day-Ho cut him off. "Someone has taken human children." He spoke into his communicator again. "This is Commander Kim. I want every available human ship in this sector mobilized. Now." Within minutes, Hyojin arrived at the meeting room with 2 security officers. She was a small woman, but like Day-Ho, she carried herself with military precision. "Sir, I've reviewed the security footage. 3 Nexari operatives infiltrated the civilian transport while the families were in the station's food court. They used some kind of sleep gas and took 12 children." "Why?" Day-Ho asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. "Intelligence suggests they were taken for sale, sir. There's a collector on Kreshetal named Vexmordian who pays high prices for rare specimens." Kethavar made a low rumbling sound in his throat. "Commander Kim, I understand you are upset, but surely this can be resolved through proper channels." Day-Ho turned to face the alien fully. "Kethavar, I need you to understand something very clearly. In your species, adults might abandon young ones if threatened, yes? It is practical, logical. Sometimes, yes," Kethavar admitted, confused by the question. "Humans are different. Every human adult, every single one, is programmed by millions of years of evolution to protect children. Not just our own children. All children. When someone takes human children, they have declared war on every human in the galaxy." The reptilian alien shifted uncomfortably. "But surely you can negotiate." "No." Day-Ho's voice was final. "There is no negotiating when children are involved." Hyojin activated a wall screen showing the station's departure logs. "Sir, I have Captain Jun-Ho on the line. A man's voice came through the speakers. "Commander, this is Junho. My ship is ready to pursue. What are your orders?" "Find those children and bring them home. Do whatever is necessary." "Understood, sir. What about the kidnappers?" Daeho was quiet for a long moment. Around the meeting room, alien traders and station personnel had begun to gather, drawn by the commotion. They watched the human commander with growing unease. "The kidnappers have made their choice," Daeho finally said. "They will face the consequences." As Captain Junho's ship departed the station in pursuit, Daeho began making more calls. First, to Earth Command, then to the Human Colonial Authority, then to fleet commanders throughout human space. Word spread quickly through the human networks. Children had been taken. Kethavar watched in growing alarm as the human's calm diplomatic mask completely disappeared. This was not the same being he had been negotiating with. This was something else entirely. "Commander," the reptilian alien tried again. "My people have dealt with child thieves before. Usually payment of ransom." Daeho looked at him with eyes that seemed to burn. "Kethavar, I appreciate your concern, but you don't understand. Humans don't pay ransom for our children. We don't negotiate, we don't compromise, we take them back." Station Administrator Grixtal, a crab-like Shellic alien, scuttled into the meeting room. "Commander Kim, perhaps we should contact the Galactic Council." "No council," Daeho said firmly. "No committees, no bureaucracy. My people are mobilizing as we speak. In 6 hours there will be more human warships in this sector than most species have seen in their entire lives." The aliens in the room looked at each other nervously. They had always known humans were militaristic, but they were usually so reasonable, so diplomatic. This was different. Heejin received another communication and listened for a moment before turning to Daeho. "Sir, Admiral Taemin is requesting permission to bring the Third Fleet." "Granted." Kethavar's eyes widened. The Third Fleet was 800 ships. "Commander, that seems like excessive force for a rescue mission." Daeho looked at the reptilian alien with something that might have been pity. "This isn't just a rescue mission anymore, Kethavar. This is a message to every criminal, slaver, and predator in the galaxy. Human children are off limits. Forever." As alarms continued to blare throughout the station, the word spread through alien communication networks. The humans were mobilizing. Something terrible was about to happen. And it all started because someone was foolish enough to take their children. Captain Junho's ship cut through space like a knife through water. The Defiant Storm was built for speed and fighting, and right now it was doing both. Every sensor on the ship was focused on tracking the Nexari vessel that had disappeared into hyperspace 23 minutes earlier. "Captain, I've got something," called So Young from the tactical station. She had been a child psychologist before joining the military, which made this mission personal for her. The Nexari ship left hyperspace residue. Mireille thinks she can track it. Mireille looked up from the engineering console, her fingers dancing over complex tracking algorithms. "The Nexari use older hyperspace drives. They leak quantum particles. I can follow the trail, but we need to move fast before it fades." "Do it," Junho ordered. He had 2 children of his own back on Earth, and the thought of them being taken made his blood run cold. "How long do we have?" "Maybe 4 hours before the trail becomes too weak to follow," Mireille replied, already feeding coordinates to the navigation system. Back on the space station, chaos was spreading. Word had gotten out that human children had been taken, and every alien trader, diplomat, and traveler was beginning to understand what this meant. Those who had dealt with humans before were the most frightened. In the station's main bar, a group of insectoid Nexari merchants huddled together in panic. "This is madness," one of them chittered to another. "Why would Zilthos do something so stupid? Everyone knows what happens when you touch human young." "Maybe he didn't know," another replied, though he didn't sound convinced. An old thorax trader at the next table turned to face them. His species looked like walking crystals, and his voice rang like broken glass. "Your friend knew exactly what he was doing. Vex Mordian pays 50 million credits for rare specimens. But your species never learns, do they? The Nexari merchants stared at him. What do you mean? 20 years ago, my people captured some human prisoners for experiments. The humans asked politely for their return. We refused. We had treaties, lawyers, proper documentation, everything legal. The thorax, trader's crystal body dimmed. 3 days later, our homeworld was surrounded by 2,000 human ships. They didn't negotiate. They didn't threaten. They just began bombing every military installation we had. But surely, the Galactic Council, one of the Nexari began. The Council tried to intervene. The humans told them, we don't have prisoners anymore. We have victims. Stand aside or be moved aside. The crystal being's light grew even dimmer. The Thorax Empire ended that day. We're still rebuilding. Commander Deho was no longer in the meeting room. He had moved to the station's main command center, where dozens of screens showed the growing human military response. Ships were arriving from every direction. Not just military vessels, but civilian ships that had been pressed into service. Transport captains, mining ship crews, even luxury yacht owners had answered the call. Kethavar had followed him, growing, more concerned by the hour. Commander, I've been monitoring galactic communications. Word is spreading. Every criminal organization in 3 sectors is going into hiding. Good, Deho replied without looking up from his screens. But Commander, this level of response, it's unprecedented. You're mobilizing what looks like an invasion force for 12 children. Now Deho did look at him. Kethvar, let me tell you something about human history. 600 years ago, one human child was taken from her village by raiders. Her father gathered 20 men and tracked the raiders for 3 months across an entire continent. When he found them, he killed every single one and burned their camp to the ground. That was one father and one child. The reptilian alien scales rippled with unease. And now 12 children have been taken, and there are 40 billion humans in the galaxy. Station Administrator Grixtal scuttled over to them, his crab-like claws clicking nervously on the deck. Commander Kim, I'm receiving reports from across the sector. Human fleets are mobilizing everywhere. My government is asking if they should prepare for war. Tell your government that this won't be a war, Deho said calmly. Wars happen between equals. This will be an extermination. Meanwhile, the Defiant Storm had followed the quantum trail to its endpoint. Captain Jun-Ho stood on his bridge, looking at the tactical display with growing anger. Confirm it, So Young, he ordered. The tactical officer checked her readings. Again. Confirmed, Captain. The trail ends at Kreshtal in the Outer Rim. It's a lawless planet, completely outside galactic jurisdiction. Mireille pulled up what information they had on the planet. Captain, Kreshtal is controlled by crime syndicates. They have orbital defense platforms and a fleet of mercenary ships. It won't be an easy target. I don't care if it's defended by the entire galactic navy, Jun-Ho replied grimly. Those children are on that planet, and we're bringing them home. He opened a communication channel back to the space station. Commander Kim, this is Captain Jun-Ho. We've tracked the Nexari, ship to Kreshtal. I'm transmitting coordinates now. Deho's voice came back immediately. Understood, Captain. What's the planet's defensive situation? Heavy, sir, but nothing we can't handle with the right support. You'll have it. Admiral Taman's fleet will be there in 18 hours. Hold, position, and maintain surveillance. Do not let that planet out of your sight. As Jun-Ho acknowledged the order, So Young approached him with a troubled expression. Captain, I've been thinking about those children. They've been missing for over 4 hours now. They must be terrified. Jun-Ho's jaw tightened. That's why we're going to make sure the people who took them regret it for the rest of their very short lives. Back on the space station, the news was spreading through alien networks faster than anyone had expected. An emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called. Trade routes were being diverted away from human space. Some species were even recalling their ambassadors from human worlds. Kethvar watched the galactic news feeds with growing amazement. Commander, I had no idea humans were capable of this level of coordination. Most species don't, Deho replied. We prefer to settle things peacefully when possible, but when our children are threatened, every human becomes part of the same military unit. We don't need orders or coordination. We all know what needs to be done. A new communication came in from Earth Command. Admiral Taemin's face appeared on the main screen, and even through the transmission his fury was obvious. Commander Kim, I have 847 ships ready to depart. What are your orders? Find those children, Admiral, and make sure this never happens again. Understood, Commander. What about prisoners? Deho was quiet for a long moment. Around the command center, aliens who had been listening to the conversation held their breath. Admiral, the people who took these children are not soldiers. They're not enemy combatants, they're predators who steal children to sell them. Handle them accordingly. The transmission ended and the command center was silent, except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of more human ships arriving at the station. Kethvar looked around at the other aliens present. They all had the same expression of dawning horror as they realized what they were witnessing. Commander, the reptilian alien said quietly, I think the galaxy is about to learn something new about humans. Deho nodded grimly. Yes, they're about to learn the difference between us being peaceful and us being harmless. We've been peaceful for a very long time, but we were never harmless. In space around the station, more human ships continued to arrive. The hunt for the children was just beginning, but across the galaxy, criminals and slavers were already starting to understand that something fundamental had changed. The humans were no longer just diplomats and traitors. They were becoming something else entirely, and it all started because someone made the mistake of taking their children. The Galactic Council chambers had never seen anything like it. Representatives from 300 species filled the massive hall, their voices creating a chaos of sounds, clicks, hisses, and electronic tones. At the center of it all, the human delegation sat in complete silence. Ambassador Ji-Hai watched the panic around her with cold eyes. She had been pulled from her vacation to handle this crisis, but she wasn't angry about the interruption. She was angry about why the interruption was necessary. The humans have mobilized over 2,000 ships, screeched the avian representative from Kepler Prime. This is unprecedented. This is madness. 2,000 and counting, Ji-Hai corrected quietly, but her voice somehow carried through the entire chamber. And it's not madness. It's mathematics. Council Speaker Thex Ara, a tall being that looked like a walking tree, called for order. Ambassador Cho, perhaps you could explain what your people intend to do? Ji-Hai stood slowly. Around her, hundreds of alien eyes focused on the small human woman. We intend to retrieve our children and ensure this never happens again. But the response is completely out of proportion, protested the Nexari trade representative, an insectoid being whose species was suddenly finding themselves very unpopular throughout the galaxy. Out of proportion? Ji-Hai repeated. Let me tell you about proportion. When the Kelmari pirates captured a human research station 5 years ago, we asked nicely for the prisoners to be returned. When they refused and started torturing our people for entertainment, we removed every Kelmari stronghold from existence. 12 asteroid bases gone in one day. That was proportional. The chamber grew quieter as species began remembering other incidents they had dismissed as rumors. Dr. Yunsu, a human xenobiologist, stepped forward to address the council. Honored representatives, I study how different species think and behave. Most of your species evolved from prey animals or solitary hunters. You understand self-preservation above all else. But humans evolved as pack hunters and communal defenders. Our survival strategy for millions of years was simple: protect the group, especially the young. A crystalline Zephyrian delegate chimed, in confusion. But surely rational thought overcomes primitive instincts? Not when it comes to children, Yunsu replied. You need to understand that every human adult, regardless of their job or personality, has the same hardwired response to child endangerment. It's not a choice we make, it's what we are. Meanwhile, on Kreshtal, The planetary governor Mordak was learning about human behavior firsthand. The ugly toad-like alien sat in his fortress reviewing reports from across the galaxy, and each one made him more nervous. "Boss," his aide chittered nervously, "the human fleet will be here in 6 hours. Maybe we should convince Vex Mordian to release the specimens." Mordak's bulbous eyes bulged with anger. "Those specimens are worth more than this entire planet. Vex Mordian paid us 50 million credits for safe harbor. We're not backing down because some humans are throwing a tantrum." "But boss, the reports from other systems—" "I don't care about other systems." Mordak slammed his flipper-like hand on his desk. "We have orbital defense platforms. We have a mercenary fleet. We have underground bunkers. Let the humans come. They'll learn that Kreshtal doesn't bow to anyone." His aide looked at the latest intelligence reports and wasn't so sure. The human fleet wasn't just large. It was using technologies nobody had seen before, ships that couldn't be detected on sensors, weapons that seemed to ignore shields entirely. It was like the humans had been hiding their true capabilities for decades. Back at the space station, Admiral Taemin had arrived with his fleet, and now he stood with Commander Daeho reviewing the tactical situation. The older man's gray hair and lined face spoke of long experience, but his eyes burned with the same protective fury that had consumed every human in the sector. "Admiral, what's our status?" Daeho asked. 847 ships of the Third Fleet plus another 1,200 vessels that have joined from other commands. Civilian ships, cargo haulers, even some luxury yachts. Every human with a ship wants to help." Taemin pulled up a tactical display. "We've also received some unexpected support." "Unexpected how?" "The Vorthak Consortium has offered their services. Kethvar convinced his people that helping us would be wise." Daeho nodded grimly. "And the others?" "Mixed reactions. Some species are staying neutral. Others are actively avoiding human space, but a few are offering assistance. Apparently, word about our response has reached some species who've had their own problems with slavers and criminals." Communications Officer Insu looked up from his station. "Admiral, I'm receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Criminal organizations are releasing any human prisoners they have and broadcasting their locations for pickup." "Smart of them," Taemin replied coldly. "What about Vex Mordian?" "No response, sir. Intelligence suggests he's convinced his collection is too valuable to give up, and his fortress on Kreshtal is impregnable." Daeho's expression didn't change. "He's about to learn the difference between impregnable and impregnable against humans. On Kreshtal itself, the 12 human children were being held in what Vex Mordian called his specimen facility. The youngest, 6-year-old Hanul, sat with the others in a large cage designed for much larger beings. Despite her age, she was trying to keep the others calm. "My brother Minho taught me about hiding," she whispered to the other children. "He's in the Scouts. He says if you're ever in trouble, you should try to signal for help and stay together." 10-year-old Jae-woo, who was the oldest boy in the group, nodded. "My dad always said that humans never abandon each other. Someone will come for us." "But what if they can't find us?" asked 8-year-old Sujin, tears in her eyes. Hanul reached through the cage bars and pointed to a small ventilation grate near the ceiling. "See that? I've been scratching marks in the metal with this." She held up a small piece of broken ceramic. "Minho taught me Morse code. I'm spelling help over and over. If anyone scans this building, they'll see the pattern." The other children looked at the tiny girl with new respect. Even at 6 years old, she was thinking like a survivor. Meanwhile, Vex Mordian himself was touring his collection, admiring the various beings he had acquired over the years. The crystalline entity was ancient by most standards, and he had spent centuries gathering the rarest specimens in the galaxy. The human children were just his latest acquisition. "Master," his robotic servant announced, "there are reports of a large human fleet approaching the system. Let them come." Vex Mordian's voice sounded like breaking glass. "My shields can withstand anything they might bring, and even if they breach the fortress, they would never risk harming their precious children by attacking directly." The robot tilted its mechanical head. "Master, analysis of human behavioral patterns suggests I don't care about their behavioral patterns. Vexmordian interrupted. I have been collecting rare beings for 8 centuries. No species has ever been willing to risk their young ones' lives just to retrieve them. The humans will negotiate, just like all the others. In space, the human fleet had reached the edge of the Kresh system. Admiral Taemin stood on his flagship's bridge, looking at the tactical display showing Kreshtal's defenses. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons. Mercenary ships patrolled the space lanes. It was exactly the kind of target that most species would consider too heavily defended to attack. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we have confirmation. The children are being held in Vexmordian's fortress. The structure is heavily shielded and built into a mountain. Direct assault would be extremely difficult. Extremely difficult for most species, Taemin corrected. Communications. Open, a channel to the entire fleet. When the channel was established, Taemin's voice carried to over 2,000 ships. All units, this is Admiral Taemin. Those orbital defense platforms and mercenary ships are standing between us and 12 human children. I want them removed from existence. All weapons free. Show them what happens when someone takes our young. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Human ships that had been disguising their true capabilities suddenly revealed weapon systems that no alien intelligence agency had ever catalogued. Stealth destroyers that had been invisible suddenly materialized and began precise strikes on the orbital platforms. Energy weapons that seemed to cut through shields like they weren't there turned the mercenary fleet into expanding clouds of debris. On the planet below, Mordak watched his orbital defenses disappear in less than 10 minutes, and finally understood why every criminal in the galaxy was suddenly afraid of humans. Get me Vexmordian, he ordered his aide. Tell him he has 1 hour to release those children or I'm turning him over to the humans myself. But Vexmordian wasn't answering his communications. The ancient collector was too busy staring at his sensor readings, watching a human fleet demonstrate that everything he thought he knew about their species was completely wrong. The surface of Kreshtal shook as human ships began their bombardment of military targets. Admiral Taemin had made it clear that this wasn't a negotiation or a siege. This was an extermination of everything that stood between the humans and their children. Commander Dong-hyun stood in the shuttle bay of his assault ship, checking his equipment one final time. Around him, 200 of the galaxy's most elite soldiers prepared for what would become known as the Kreshtal Raid. These weren't regular troops. They were fathers, mothers, uncles, and aunts who had volunteered for the most dangerous part of the mission. Remember, Dong-hyun addressed his team, we have 12 children in that fortress. Our job is to get them out alive. Everything else on this planet is secondary. He paused, looking at each soldier. But anyone who helped put those children in cages will answer for it. Combat medic Yejin checked her medical supplies. She had been a pediatric trauma specialist before joining the military, and she knew these children would need immediate psychological care. Commander, what's the latest intelligence on their condition? Unknown. Vexmordian hasn't responded to any communications. We have to assume the worst and hope for the best. On the planet below, Planetary Governor Mordak was discovering that his fortress wasn't nearly as secure as he had believed. Human troops had somehow penetrated his defensive perimeter without triggering a single alarm. The first sign of their presence was when his guards simply stopped reporting in. How is this possible? Mordak demanded of his military advisor. We have sensor grids, automated defenses, force fields. Sir, it appears the humans have stealth technology far beyond what our intelligence reports indicated. They're moving through our defenses like they don't exist. Mordak's bulbous eyes darted around his command center. Contact Vexmordian. Tell him to release the specimens immediately. This has gone too far. Sir, Vexmordian's fortress has gone into full lockdown. He's not accepting any communications. Deep in the mountain fortress, Vexmordian stared at his collection of rare beings with growing panic. The human fleet had destroyed his orbital defenses in minutes. Now, human soldiers were somehow penetrating planetary defenses that had never been breached before. Master, his robotic servant reported, human infiltration teams have reached the outer perimeter of the fortress. Estimated time to breach, 37 minutes. Impossible. Vex Mordian's crystalline body flickered with agitation. My shields are powered by a fusion reactor. My walls are 10 meters of reinforced titanium and ceramic composite. No force in the galaxy can break through that quickly. Analysis suggests the humans are using molecular disruptors, Master. Technology that separates atomic bonds at the quantum level. Vex Mordian began pacing frantically. Then we use the specimens as leverage. Surely the humans won't risk harming their young ones. In their cage, the 12 human children had been listening to the distant sounds of battle. Ha-Newell, the youngest, had managed to work loose one of the cage bars using the piece of broken ceramic she had found. I can squeeze through, she whispered to the others. I can unlock the cage from outside. Jae-woo, the 10-year-old, shook his head. It's too dangerous. What if the guards catch you? What if they don't? Ha-Newell replied with the simple logic of a 6-year-old. My brother always says that sometimes you have to be brave even when you're scared. Before anyone could stop her, the tiny girl squeezed through the gap she had created and dropped silently to the floor outside the cage. The other children held their breath as she crept toward the control panel that operated the cage locks. Meanwhile, Commander Dong-hyun's teams had reached the fortress itself. What they found defied everything they knew about defensive architecture. The human soldiers moved through corridors and chambers like ghosts, their advanced equipment allowing them to see through walls and detect life signs through meters of solid rock. Team Alpha, report. Dong-hyun spoke into his communicator. Corridor secured, Commander. No hostiles encountered. These defenses were designed to stop conventional attacks, not infiltration. Team Beta, what's your status? We've located the main power distribution center. On your word, we can disable all security systems and life support to non-essential areas. Negative. We don't know where the children are being held. We can't risk cutting life support to their location. As the human teams moved deeper into the fortress, they began encountering Vex Mordian's private guards. The engagements were brief and one-sided. Guards who had been trained to intimidate smugglers and pirates found themselves facing soldiers, who moved like deadly shadows and fought with precision they had never encountered. Yejin followed behind the assault teams, her medical equipment ready. She had studied the psychological effects of kidnapping on children, and she knew the next few hours would be critical for their recovery. Commander, she called to Dong-hyun, when we find them, let me approach first. They've been traumatized and they might not trust anyone immediately, even rescuers. In the specimen chamber, Ha-Newell had successfully unlocked the cage. The 12 children crept out quietly, staying together as they had been taught. Jae-woo took the lead, trying to remember the layout of the corridors they had been brought through. This way, he whispered. I think the exit is toward the mountain face. They moved as quietly as 12 frightened children could manage, following. Emergency lighting through corridors filled with the sounds of distant battle. Behind them, alarms began to sound as their empty cage was discovered. Vex Mordian's voice echoed through the fortress's communication system. Human soldiers, I know you can hear me. I have your young ones. Cease your advance immediately or they will be harmed. Commander Dong-hyun's response came through every speaker in the building. Vex Mordian, this is Commander Lim of Human Special Forces. You have exactly one chance to surrender yourself and release those children unharmed. You have 60 seconds to comply. You cannot reach me in 60 seconds. My fortress is impregnable. 59 seconds. Vex Mordian's crystalline form flickered, with panic as he realized the human commander wasn't bluffing. Reports were coming in from throughout the fortress. Human soldiers were advancing through his defenses like they were made of paper. Technology he had believed was impossible was tearing through barriers that had protected him for centuries. 50 seconds. In desperation, Vex Mordian began making his way toward the specimen chamber, intending to use the children as shields. But when he arrived, he found only an empty cage and the sound of his guards shouting in confusion. 40 seconds. The children had managed to reach a maintenance corridor that led toward the outside of the mountain. Ha-Newell's small size had allowed her to squeeze through a ventilation shaft and unlock a service door from the other side. Now they were moving through narrow passages that maintenance robots used to service the fortress's systems. 30 seconds. Commander Dong-hyun and his teams had reached the specimen chamber and found it empty. Advanced sensors immediately began, tracking the children's biosignatures through the maintenance shafts. Team Charlie, redirect to Section 7. The children are moving through the service corridors, intercept and provide protection. 20 seconds. Vex Mordian realized his leverage was gone. The children had escaped their cage, his guards were being systematically eliminated, and human soldiers were moving through his impregnable fortress like it was made of air. 10 seconds. The ancient collector made one final attempt to reach his personal escape pod, but he found his way blocked by a human soldier in advanced combat armor. Commander Dong-hyun stood in the corridor, his weapon trained on the crystalline being. Time's up. In the maintenance corridor, the children heard new voices calling to them, but these voices were speaking Korean, and they sounded kind and concerned rather than threatening. Children, this is Combat Medic Bay. We're human soldiers and we're here to take you home. Please don't be afraid. Hanyul was the first to peek. Around a corner, she saw a woman in military armor, but the woman had removed her helmet and was smiling gently. Behind her, more soldiers waited patiently. Are you really here to help us? Hanyul asked in a small voice. Yes, sweetheart. We're here to take you back to your families. You're safe now. One by one, the children emerged from the maintenance shaft. Yejin immediately began checking them for injuries while other soldiers secured the area. The children were frightened and traumatized, but they were alive and unharmed. Jae-woo was very brave, Hanyul told Yejin. He kept everyone together, and Soo-jin shared her water with the little ones. As Yejin worked with the children, Commander Dong-hyun's voice came through the communication system. This is Commander Lim to all teams. The children are secure and unharmed. Mission accomplished. Throughout the fortress, human soldiers began the systematic removal of Vex Mordian's collection. Other beings who had been imprisoned for the entertainment of wealthy collectors were freed and given medical attention. Vex Mordian himself was taken into custody, though his crystalline form was cracked and dim with defeat. As he was led away, he looked back at his destroyed fortress and finally understood the lesson that every criminal in the galaxy was learning. There is no profit worth the risk of taking human children. The rescue had taken less than 4 hours from landing to extraction. 3 weeks after the rescue, Dr. Sung-woo sat in a comfortable room on Earth, watching 12 children play in a specially designed therapy garden. The young ones were laughing and running, but he could still see the careful way they stayed, close to each other, and how they always knew where the exits were. How are they doing? Asked their parents, who had been invited to observe the session. Better than I expected, Sung-woo replied honestly. Children are remarkably resilient. The trauma is real, but so is their recovery. Hanyul especially has been helping the others process what happened. She's become a natural leader. Through the window, they could see the youngest girl teaching the others a game that involved staying together as a group while moving from one safe spot to another. Even in play, the children were practicing survival skills. Will they be okay? Jae-woo's mother asked, her voice tight with worry. They'll be different, Sung-woo said gently. But different doesn't mean broken. They've learned that the world can be dangerous, but they've also learned that humans will move mountains to protect each other. That's not a bad lesson. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council chambers, an emergency session was reaching its conclusion. Representatives from hundreds of species had spent days debating the human response protocol, and the final vote was unanimous. Ambassador Ji-hai stood at the human delegation's podium, reading the formal declaration that would change galactic law forever. By unanimous vote of the Galactic Council, it is hereby established that any harm, kidnapping, or trafficking of human children will be considered an act of war against the entire human species. This declaration supersedes all existing treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic protections. Council Speaker Thexara's voice resonated through the chamber. Furthermore, all species agree to immediately report any knowledge of crimes against human children to human authorities. This is not a request. This is a requirement for continued participation in galactic civilization. The Nexari trade representative, One of the few of his species brave enough to still attend council meetings raised a trembling claw. But what about proportional response? What about due process? Jihai looked at the insectoid alien with cold eyes. The proportional response to taking our children is the complete destruction of everyone responsible. As for due process, that's simple. Did you take human children? If yes, you face the consequences. If no, you have nothing to worry about. But surely there must be exceptions, legal frameworks. No exceptions, no frameworks, no negotiations. Jihai's voice carried the absolute certainty that had become humanity's signature in the weeks since the rescue. The galaxy has learned what happens when human children are threatened. Consider this declaration a public service announcement. On Crescital, the cleanup was nearly complete. The planet that had once been a haven for criminals and slavers was now under human administration. Planetary Governor Mordak had been arrested and was awaiting trial, though most observers expected he would spend the rest of his life in prison. Admiral Taemin walked through the ruins of Vexmordian's fortress with a planetary reconstruction team. The ancient collector's mountain stronghold had been converted into a memorial and warning to future generations. "Admiral," one of his officers reported, "we've finished cataloging Vexmordian's collection. Over 300 beings from 47 species, some held captive for decades. They're all being returned to their homeworlds. And Vexmordian himself, transferred to the maximum security facility on Luna. He'll be studied by xenobiologists who want to understand his psychology, then he'll spend eternity in isolation." Taemin nodded grimly. "Make sure the records of this operation are distributed to every criminal organization in the galaxy. I want them to understand exactly what happened here and why." In space around the former crime planet, human ships maintained patrol routes that would continue for years. The message was clear. This sector was now under human protection, and anyone who preyed on the innocent would face the same fate as Vexmordian. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, the session was winding down, but alien representatives continued to ask questions that revealed their growing understanding of humanity's true nature. A crystalline Zephyrian delegate chimed nervously. "Ambassador Cho, before this incident, most species believed humans were primarily peaceful traders and diplomats. Now we've seen military capabilities that exceed most star empires. Were you deliberately hiding your true strength?" Jihai considered the question carefully. "We weren't hiding anything. We simply had no reason to demonstrate our full capabilities. Most disputes can be resolved through conversation and compromise. But when someone takes our children, conversation time is over." An avian representative from the Outer Rim fluttered anxiously. "But what about proportionality? Thousands of ships for 12 children seems excessive." "Does it?" Jihai asked. "How many ships would your species send to retrieve 12 of your young ones?" The avian delegate was quiet for a long moment. "Truthfully, probably none. We would negotiate, pay ransom, or consider them an acceptable loss. And that," Jihi said softly, "is the difference between humans and most other species. We don't consider any child an acceptable loss. Ever." Dr. Yunsu stepped forward to address the council. "Honored delegates, I want to make sure you understand what you witnessed. The human response to this kidnapping wasn't unusual or extreme, by our standards. It was exactly what any group of humans would do if children were threatened. The only unusual thing was the scale, and that was only because we now have the technology and organization to respond on a galactic level." A reptilian delegate from the inner systems hissed softly. "Doctor, are you saying that if a single human child were taken tomorrow, the response would be the same?" "Exactly the same," Yunsu confirmed. "One child, or 1,000 children. The response is identical. Overwhelming force applied until the children are safe and the threat is eliminated." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Every species present began to understand that they had been coexisting with a civilization whose protective instincts operated on a completely different level from their own. Council Speaker Thexara spoke into the silence. "The Council recognizes that this event has fundamentally changed our understanding of human behavior. Perhaps it would be wise to discuss how we can prevent such incidents in the future." "That's simple," Jihai replied. Don't take our children, don't threaten our children, don't harm our children. Don't even think about our children in ways that might lead to any of the above. Do that, and humans will continue to be the peaceful diplomatic species you've always known. And if someone violates this understanding, Jihai's smile was cold and sharp. Then they'll learn what 12 kidnappers learned on Kreshtal, that there is no force in the galaxy more dangerous than humans protecting their young. As the council session ended and delegates began filing out, many were already sending urgent communications to their homeworlds. New security protocols would be implemented. Criminal organizations would be warned. Trade routes would be adjusted to avoid even the possibility of accidentally threatening human children. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would reshape interspecies relations for generations to come. Humans weren't the strongest species, or the most technologically advanced, or the most numerous, but they were absolutely, unquestionably, the most dangerous when their children were threatened. On Earth in the therapy garden, Hano looked up from her play and saw her parents watching through the window. She waved at them, then turned back to the other children. "Come on," she called to them in the confident voice of someone who had learned that no matter how scary things got, humans never abandoned their own. "Let's play the hiding game again. Jae-woo, you be the rescue team this time." The children ran off laughing, their game a form of therapy that helped them process their trauma while celebrating their rescue. They would carry the experience with them for the rest of their lives, but so would the galaxy. Everyone now knew what happened when you took human children, and everyone had decided they never wanted to find out what humans were capable of when they were truly angry. The new understanding was simple, universal, and absolute. Human children are off limits, forever.